All eyes in the crypto space are on Bitcoin because the blow off top doesn't happen until Bitcoin goes crazy. Now, Bitcoin recently blasted past all-time highs, but is now sitting right about at that same previous all-time high level. So today, let's look at the charts and see if it looks like Bitcoin is ready to go to 130,000. Because if so, that is really going to juice up the crypto markets. We'll also take a look at some altcoins and some things happening with them. It's going to be a good show, so strap in. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, if you, like me, came into crypto because you realize there is potential here for life-changing gains over a greater 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage crypto investor, much like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, you're in exactly the right place. Now, I was once new to the crypto space 8 years ago. Back then, I didn't know at that time that all the really big YouTube channels, you grow a huge YouTube channel by talking about things that were already expensive and high, and then further being optimistic as to why they'd go higher. And I didn't realize that for at least the first year, that incentives were all wrong for those covering crypto on YouTube. I was so hungry for analysis on cryptos that were underpriced and undervalued, and I wasn't really finding that. So in 2020, I created that. We discuss here crypto as an investment and discuss the most important things like the investment cycles and projects and the pros and cons of those projects, the risks of those projects, and guess the upside if they come together well. And we cover things when they're cheap and when they're down. Unfortunately, for most people, not when they are searching for them, but for those savage few that really are looking for undervalued gems, this is your home. Now, if you're looking for deeper discussions on top of this, join our private Patreon group. That allows you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. The private Discord is where the best discussion and best info is, and there are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul, who is joining us from DEVVE with 30 years experience trading on price action, he invests in many different markets. None of this to be taken as financial advice. If you haven't already, make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Help me welcome Paul from DEVVE to the channel. Paul, so good to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Sorry that I had to rush off last week, but I don't have to rush off this week. And but yeah, let's have a look and see what's going on.
Yes, I mean, crazy like this last week that Bitcoin busted through all-time highs, and now it's kind of settled around that. I'm really curious to see what your analysis on that is. And what else, what other markets you see, what is going on with them? Because what's funny is since really starting to get to know Paul almost 3.5 years ago, I didn't realize prior to then how much different markets interplay with the crypto market.
Yeah.
And so I think my audience loves the show as much as I do because Paul keeps an eye on so many different markets. And it's helped me understand the better correlation of where money will flow out of one thing and into another. And often as certain monies flow certain directions, you can see it flowing into crypto. So
yeah.
What are you taking a look at these days and what's on your mind?
Well, always all the markets are on my mind. I've always looked at everything just because being a technical analyst, a chart is a chart is a chart. But also some areas become more and more interesting depending on what's happening in the world. And sometimes you get a synchronization of currencies, bonds, stocks, crypto, precious metals, everything moving together. And sometimes you get this only one thing's moving, and it's like a bit of a puzzle. We're all trying to work out where the markets are going, and I think it just helps to have as many clues as possible. You can just do straight technicals on one market and just keep following that, and that's absolutely fine, because ultimately whatever you're watching has to go up or down depending on your position in order for you to make money. But it does, I think it helps, because when you see other markets, it gives you more experience as to what other technical patterns are looking like. Sometimes it can also help because you might not be emotionally involved in those other markets, and it helps you to read the charts a bit better. Because as we know, a lot of the big percentage of what we all look at in terms of markets is all emotion. So it's all pretty much emotion, and trying to detach emotion from trading, which is basically the hardest thing to do. So if
The
you don't,
hardest thing of it, right? So that
yeah,
we can act strictly logical and not emotional.
yeah, that's right. So um, as we've seen over the last few years, we've had some very highly emotional points. Possibly the most emotional was the tariffs, or one of the most emotional was the tariff situation. But there have been plenty along the way, and you're not human if you don't kind of react to it, of course. But also the charts are very cold. They don't show emotion, and that's their advantage. They don't that it Trading is not supposed to be emotional. It's supposed to be right. Now, it's a lot of people use this avenue for things like there's some people who like taking risks. They're just kind of risk takers. They should be skydiving or bungee jumping or doing something like that, or doing what Tom Cruise does. He's obviously a risk taker, but that's not what the markets are about. If you're looking for that sort of thrill in the markets, you can get it, but it's also too emotional, and you're likely to make the wrong decisions at the wrong time. And that's why technicals help, so to ground your view on facts, i.e., we don't really know for 100% anything about the markets, but what we do know, probability says that if this is happening, then this will happen. So we can go with the trend as long as the equity markets are still printing a basic upward trend, and as long as most people are still bearish and expecting the market to fall and skeptical, that's usually a good sign. So that's kind of where it all comes from. And when you see a major top or bottom, it usually follows from a major rally or decline. And so when we hit those periods, it it's very difficult to miss them, because the last big one that we had was 2008, and that was a global financial crisis. And the next one, because there always will be one at some stage, um, will be just as big. So, it's just a question of looking for the signs and looking at what's telling you that things are starting to turn over. So usually, what I saw in 2006 going into 2007 was excessive property speculation, and there were people taking out mortgages by just saying that they earned a certain amount of money. The banks were just lending money. They didn't really care, which was very different to the environment beforehand, when they were quite strict about what you could borrow. So lending practices had gone sort of out the window. But then the banks and the property stock started to top out, and they started to go down from about 2005. So it was a couple of years before the actual crash. Now, Bitcoin obviously didn't exist until sort of 2009. So there was nothing to correlate it with. So we are seeing and learning more about how it fits into the bigger picture, but it's clearly a risk on trade. And, I was reading from a very good friend of mine, a story about a guy who runs a website company in the UK, and apparently he got like he floated this company, got $5 million worth of, or £5 million worth of capital, and stuck it in Bitcoin, and it's now worth 175 million. That is very much like what was going on around the end of the dot-com boom. And so it's kind of beginning of the end signs that is happening, because there were people who just stick .com at the end of their name, and the stock would just go, they would do an IPO and the stock would go through the roof. And that seems to be like a similar thing. So I don't think we're there yet, but that is like the first sign that this is becoming more mainstream, and people are just throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more people throwing caution to the wind. As Bitcoin climbs higher, people will get very irrational in this idea that it will never stop going up. I was even listening to a major channel this morning, and they were talking about how if nation states get involved, the Bitcoin price is going to really blow up to 500,000 or a million. And in that case, there would be no bubble and there would be no 4-year cycle, and it would just be like a soft decline as a reset. I'm thinking if it goes up to a million, there is no soft decline, because on the way down, it's going to bust a bunch of leverage positions that people have taken. Because when it gets crazy like that, people feel more secure than ever because of recency bias that it will never come down. Oh, and it will. And as they take out leverage on the backside, when it starts coming down, those leverage positions start getting liquidated, which further puts downward pressure. So when it swings too far to the upside, always swings too far to the downside. And we saw that in the property markets. Yeah, 2005 started that bust. It really took effect further 2006, 2007. As lending guidelines got massively cut down, making it hard for people to borrow money to buy homes, and the property markets got savaged. Really bottomed out 2010 through 2012. Then the big hedge funds came in, started putting billions of dollars into buying houses at way too cheap, and now BlackRock is one of the biggest asset owners in the world.
Yeah,
BlackRock was one of those that came in. They went into Phoenix, San Diego, number of other markets. They spent like $3 billion alone in Phoenix in houses. And they would just buy them and rent them out. They would rent them out and it would cover their debt servicing and then some. And so all the appreciation they got on top of it was just sheer bonus money. And they're buying homes at $50,000, putting $10,000 to fix them up. And now those homes are worth $280,000. And so that was 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. They were buying homes at those prices.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if and when they liquidate them, whether they're just going to hold on to them or whether they liquidate them. But yeah, maybe that's something we can look out for. But as far as the broader market goes, aside from some tariff shocks, one could argue that this is early presidency stuff that's going on. If you're going to do anything, you do it in your first term because you've got a few years to sort it out. And because of the way people remember things, they just remember the end. They don't remember the beginning that well. So if you're doing well at the end, that's why usually in the last year, there's plenty of opportunity to sort of improve the system, tax cuts, make the stock market go up. A few people were surprised that Biden didn't get in because the markets were doing actually relatively well. But I think a few people should have really seen the signs that things weren't great. But let's not get into politics there. But normally from a market point of view, the incumbent would stay in if the stock market's going up. If within the 4-year term we get a turn down, Trump will definitely get blamed for it. And so it might be his fault, it might not. I guess we'll have to follow that a bit further down the curve. But yeah, I mean, there's certain that big beautiful bill might come back to haunt him. But we shall see. For the moment, things are going in the right direction.
His naming mechanisms crack me up. Shout out to Chris Ashby in the house. Chris is good enough to do our timestamps.
Thanks, Chris.
Later, if you catch this on replay later, those timestamps are done. Thanks to Chris. Thank you for that. Says, what's up, rainmakers? It's stormy outside today. Tons of rain and lightning. A sign of rains to come? Question mark.
Well, you'd be surprised actually how weather patterns can affect the stock market, but that's for another day.
Hey, Paul MJ, thanks for coming on today. Happy Wednesday. Shago says, rain. I love that little rain cloud emoji. I am excited because the rains are coming, just like farmers waiting for the rains to really help their crops grow. That same analogy is what's coming later this year, in my opinion. Happy Wednesday. May the rains be ever in our favor. Kevin Hawthorne with good morning from Lakeland, Florida. Can we review Strike? Okay, we'll see if we can find that one. Let me flag that, and we should have time to look at that. All
And you know
right.
what was frustrating about last week was, for me, was the 2 weeks ago we talked about OMI, and last week I was like, I wanted to show the breakout pattern that was potentially coming, and we ran out of time. And it was like,
We'll have to add OMI in there and take a look at it.
yeah, I think we should, because that's been on watch. And I did say in the first week that if it went up, you know, I wasn't saying that I called it, because it was just the first step and I could just see something happening. But last week there was definitely more evidence that it was going to tripwire into something. And so I was a bit frustrated with myself that I didn't get around to speaking about it. So I think we should take a look at it, because, you know, obviously, you know, my opinion has been pretty bearish on it for some time. So I think it's also fair to look at when it starts to turn around as well.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep an eye on that one. That one is one of my major holdings, and a lot of my audience too is holding OMI. And so I love keeping an eye on it. I think the fundamentals behind the company behind that are so strong. That's why I'm in love with that one. All right. I'm going to bring up your screen so you can show us what you're looking at, what different markets, and then we'll take a look at Bitcoin and ETH.
Yeah. So things seem to have, I don't know whether it's just me, but things seem to have calmed down a bit emotionally in the last sort of week or so. But the Dow is still rallying. It's come back up to its pre-tariff debacle, whatever you want to call it, situation. It's recovered V rebound. Not all the way back up to all-time highs, but I think a breather's to be expected. But it's still in an upward trend. So it's just a watching brief. The transportation average, which should really follow, we're gearing up for a nice breakout here, and that just wasn't to be. So, you know, the probabilities of that were looking really good. I was getting a bit excited that it was ready to go. We had rising lows and all that. And then along come the tariffs and knocked that all the way back down. But it's, you know, rebounded quickly, but we still got a bit of work to do before that looks positive. But the main ones, the NASDAQ and the S&P, they're nearly back to all-time highs. You know, they're heading in the right direction. So broadly speaking, the market's looking kind of bullish. And I think this is a good sign going ahead into the kind of second half of this year, where risk on should continue. So the VIX index is elevated naturally because a lot of traders have seen, or we got this recent kind of shockwave from the tariff situation. It always takes a bit of time for this to settle back down. The lows have been rising since July. So you can see that there is some pattern of support coming in. So people are very trigger happy as soon as there's any sign of weakness. So they're not trusting this rally at all, which is kind of a good thing in some ways. But it can create a bit of volatility when the markets are thin. But the main thing is, what does this all mean for the crypto market? And as we've said recently, we've got some bullish patterns that have been coming out of the Asian market. So the Chinese and the Hong Kong stock markets have been making bases, starting to move higher, which is a really good sign. We all know that gold has been in this, you know, mega upward trend, and the trend's not necessarily over in terms of time to sell, but it has been consolidating. I think we mentioned from this high in April that it was possibly time for a correction, and it's been going sideways, not down, but just sideways, which is fine. I've been watching closely for this breakout in silver, and it's getting a step closer potentially. So we'll see. But what's also interesting is that, and the reason why we look at commodities, by the way, is because when you've got good demand in the economy, you see base and precious metals move higher, because that shows demand for business. Now, platinum has been a sideways market that suddenly jumped up, and we'll have to see if it can take out this $1,100 area, which it stopped right on the previous high. But the way it's gone into it definitely needs to keep that on watch, because if that starts moving up, it will fit into the pattern of gold and silver and a broadening of the precious metals situation, which is a good sign. Now, against that, we've got palladium, which is still not really going anywhere. So palladium used in catalytic converters, it's sideways, but there's this very nice resistance line that I'm watching. If it eventually gets to it, that could be a really nice base that would coincide with perhaps a broader bull market elsewhere. So copper, that's still moving up, even though it was hit with the tariffs, it's moving back up again. And aluminium, copper and aluminium, basically in upward trends. So that's all pointing to positive risk on markets. What does that mean for the dollar? Well, the dollar has been in decline, started from this high in 22, and it's been going sideways. And for those of you who've been watching for a while, we've heard this breakdown of this range. It was so ready to go when we were in September, and then it just went up as the market anticipated or got wind of the tariff situation. Because at the peak of the tariff situation, or when they were announced, the dollar started to go down and has consistently gone down from that point, even breaking below this 100, this 100 level. So the dollar's in a relatively weakening state, and that's pretty clear from the technicals. It doesn't mean there's going to be a straight line move, but the weaker the dollar gets, the better it is for the global economy, because it's equivalent to oil going down, which it is going down. If oil goes down, gas prices go down, that's good for everybody, isn't it? They've got more money to spend elsewhere. Companies, whenever you buy something, you think about the weight of that product and how much it costs to deliver that to your door. It is a big factor in producing goods. It's a big factor in delivering goods. It's, I think, one of the most important things to look for. And yet it's not really talked about enough in terms of what it is or how it affects the economy. So the fact that oil is going down, I think, is a really positive thing for the market. Even though oil stocks tend to get hit, or oil producers, which is part of the market, I think that's less important than the fact that most people have got more money in their pockets. So the dollar's going down, which is a good sign. And the more that accelerates, the better. As far as interest rates goes, people have been very worried. So very, very worried that US rates were starting to go up again. And, US yields were rising, which could take the kind of heat off the bull market. And as far as 10-year bonds go, yields have been rising, but not really as much. It's not enough to break out and show anything that's super negative. Not yet. An orderly rise, I think, is fine in the 10-year. It's just whether the short-term interest rate market is going to go down. The short-term interest rate market is looking less likely to see a rate cut. And I think this is where because of the tariff situation, what we've seen is the UK cut interest rates. The Canadian Central Bank will probably cut interest rates in June. So UK cut, Australia have cut, Canadians will cut. That means there's more cutting going on outside of the US. And so people are thinking, well, if the US aren't cutting rates, but everyone else is, then it's time to buy the dollar, which is completely the opposite of what I think will happen. Because they're cutting rates, that's the final cut, and it's actually going to boost their economy so much so that they're going to have to rein in those cuts later on. So the market is forward looking, it's not looking at now. And therefore, I think the prospects for US rates to go down, although there was one more cut maybe in the system, it's not come about, and the data's got to look pretty bad before it's going to happen. I would still hold out that we might get a cut. Looks more like it would be in July rather than June. I don't think we're going to get a cut next month unless we get a really bad non-farm payrolls figure in early June, which we could do because some of what the tariff situation, if it's going to have any effect, short-term effects, we might see in that data. So that uncertainty might actually hit the US. But so far, the market's not really expecting much of a cut until July, but still perhaps one more. All I'm saying here is that if there is one more cut, fine. I don't think we necessarily need it as long as oil prices and the dollar's going down. But if we do get it, brilliant. If we're thinking, is it required for Bitcoin to go higher? Well, you can just see it's Bitcoin doesn't seem to really care right now. So the altcoin market, I don't think will care that much. But it's always nice to have it too. So if you got rates going down, dollar going down, stock market going up, it's all good for risk on. So all these things, China doing well as well. China recovering, was supposed to be a basket case. That's doing okay. European stock markets are going up. It's a global bull market. So everything seems to point to more money flowing into riskier assets. And there's this broad synchronization across lots of different countries, which is really good. Now, it's really good until everything starts to turn down and then it all happens in one go. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it.
So, huge super chat from Mike Jones. Special request, can you do a deep dive on DevvStream Corp stock? They use DEVVE's blockchain technology. Yes, we will definitely prioritize that to the front of the line. Once we jump in and we look at Bitcoin and then ETH, we'll take a look at DevvStream and then DEVVE, the token behind it. And I was looking at DevvStream the other day. It did like a 3x. I don't remember if it was like a week ago, 10 days ago. And I haven't looked at where it's gone since. So that'll be fun to get a look at what's going on with that.
Sure. So, so did you want me to carry on with
yeah,
Bitcoin?
whatever. Yes.
All
yeah. Carry on with what you're looking at. I just wanted to give a shout out to Mike Jones for the super chat and address that we will take a look at it in a bit.
Yeah, sure. Now, I haven't looked at it before, so I don't know whether what I'm going to see is going to be useful. So, I'm really sorry if it isn't, but I'll definitely take a look. It's a bit like MicroStrategy. I've looked at that. I can see stuff there, but this obviously I've not seen before. So it'll be interesting to look at for lots of reasons. So as far as Bitcoin goes, trend is still up. Break into a new high is usually a sign to buy. So this does not rule out potential pullbacks. So what can one say technically about a market that's an all-time high? It's we would never short something like that. But if this was the first time where you were deciding to go long, it also might feel a little bit late to the party. So what we look at here is the fear and greed. The fear and greed's actually fairly reasonable. It's not gone crazy. And in fact, I think it's come off a little bit, even though Bitcoin stayed high, which I think is a good sign. I think that implies that there will be more upside here, because if that was sort of pegged further into the fear, not fear, into the greed, then it would suggest that people are really loading up at this point, and that would be a bad sign. But most people are too frightened to buy a new high, and therefore I think on balance the trend will push higher. But I have to say that we've had a very decent rally from 74, so it would also be very reasonable for a sideways range before it continues higher, and volatility may start to pick up as more interest comes in, particularly with the story that I was just recently talking about. So, but overall, the trend is still bullish. I haven't got a reversal sign yet, not a major reversal sign. Perhaps bringing some of the sentiment a bit lower might be a good thing for the longer term trend. But there has been, over the last month or so, or a couple of weeks certainly, a pickup in the altcoins, as we've shown. Now, that it's not all altcoins, it is very selective, but there are signs that things are shifting. The market is saying, okay, do I buy Bitcoin at 100,000, or I did buy some at 74. I've got a profit, 100,000. Do I take some out and put some into something more risky? That more likely to be those questions answered, which could support further upside in altcoins. We looked at the potential breakout in Ethereum, and that's moved really nicely. And I really like this short-term pattern here. So I think there's a chance this might just go up really, really hard again, and we could be looking at a test of this 4,000 level within a few, well, I'll say a few months, but it could come quicker than that. If it's going to move, it's going to move soon. So I think a move into altcoins is something perhaps to be looking more closely at from a broader perspective. Ethereum was a bit of a worry because it was very weak when everything else was strong. But we did get a good breakout to the upside, or the short-term breakout. It's still sitting within these major patterns. So that I'm not saying there isn't wood to chop, but if we take a step back, this whole area is still considered to be a consolidation. So one of the important things in the final part of this trend could be that Ethereum is just burning high with everything else. A synchronization of all the majors would be a very good sign that we're in an extremely strong bull market, and also would be something to indicate that we're perhaps heading towards the end. But there could be quite some way to go, even if we are heading towards the end. The market can move a long way. So I think Ethereum is, for me, not because it's cheaper, it's more interesting because it's finally moving. So I think that should be ready to go.
Awesome. Let's take a look over at DevvStream. Now let's see if you're able to find it on.
So this is an actual stock.
Right? Yeah.
So it's DevvStream
with 2 V's.
Okay, here we are. So it's a NASDAQ traded stock. Okay, so the first thing is there isn't that much data, or I don't know what all of this is here.
I'm not quite sure. They did some kind of, I think, to get on the stock market, they might have bought an existing company. I can't remember what they did, instead of having to go through the traditional listing process.
Okay.
And so really the data where it dips down is what I know is related to them, and then the recent climb.
Yeah. So there's a few things to talk about here. First of all, if we take it from here, this big gap, panic selling, and then this consolidation would be people stepping in to buy because it's, inverted commas, cheap, and then having to throw it out again as it hit new lows. Now, we didn't get a complete capitulation at the low, which you don't necessarily have to have, but it is a good sign when you get what's called a spike, where the market goes down and then recovers very quickly. It suggests that the sentiment's got too far one way and it will go back the other way. What we did get was a few weeks of consolidation and then a very strong candle or bar. So this bar here was telling us, or the first one was telling us, that the market was turning, but this was really a very strong signal, of course. Now that followed through again with another week, but as you can see, it traded all the way up to nearly $1.40, $1.36, which was the peak of where the buying was here. So clearly that area there has got a lot of supplies. So the people were buying here, buying around here, were quite pleased to see zero on their positions from being quite underwater. So let the stock out again. So it's come off a lot from there, which is not a great sign. But it's still operating from a low that started down here, if you see what I mean. So the broader trend, the broader trend from here is obviously negative, but I think this is trying to build a base of some kind. And taking into account that we're talking about probabilities, and this is not, this is things that can change day to day, minute to minute, in fact. But I like that as potentially for something that is building a base. So this could be the left shoulder, this could be the head, this could be the right shoulder that's building before it breaks higher. So where I would expect support to come in is around the 49 to, I'd say 49 cents. I mean, it's traded below there, so we could extend that down to the 37. But you're looking for some form of symmetrical setup where this is repeated over here. And we're getting something like that. I mean, it's never going to be completely the same, but this whole area, if this is a accumulation phase, which is simply people looking at the long term going, the market's got this completely wrong, we're going to be buying on every dip. If this whole area is to be a base, then um, I would expect this dip, and now for it to start to move up. So within a few weeks, this should start to be heading back up to this 133, 36 area. And then once it's broken that, that's where the base is complete. So it's probability, I would say, 60-40 to the upside, which is more, it's more focused on the upside, but it does still need to complete a break of this line here, this key resistance here. And there is going to be a lot of volatility. I mean, in terms of percentages, this is swinging around a crazy amount. It is a very, very volatile market, which is it's not really very good because investors don't like that. Investors want things to settle down. Now, to be fair, if it is a relatively small stock, that will happen, and it happens a lot. What we want to see is for it to mature slightly and for the trend to become more established and for the swings not to be so massive. Like you can get very small stocks that even though each move is a very big percentage, they still don't swing around as much as this within a week. So I think overall, I'm going to keep an eye on it. We'll definitely come back to it. But as I say, I think at this point, I would give it a 60-40 probability that it wants to go up. It does look like it's forming some form of base, but it's not all full steam ahead either, because the base isn't complete, and the fact that it's come off this rally still has to be taken into account. Now, I wouldn't have expected it to continue up either, to be fair. I mean, I'd love it if it did go up. You know, when people are long, it's great. When stocks just keep going and going, they do need some form of break, a consolidation. Otherwise, they do become completely overbought and they're going up for the wrong reasons. But forming a base for me is a much better process, and it's much more stable, or potentially stable from a technical point of view, to make the rally, if it does come about, if it does break through this level and start to trend up, it will make it for me far more sustainable. So obviously we'll come back to it at some point, but as I say, I think this looks like it's base building, and if I were trading it personally, I'd be waiting to see how it moves forward, but it would definitely be one that I'd put on the watch list, as it were, and I'd be watching closely.
Awesome. Let's jump over to the DEVVE token, DEVVE, and take a look at that and just see how that looks compared to the stock related to them.
Yeah. So the DEVVE token, from what I could see, was last time we looked at it, it was just sinking a little bit down this downward trend line, looking a little bit heavy. It feels like it just wants to touch this 49 cents level before it moves up. So we're back to this. It's broadly moving higher, but it's coming back in this correction. We're looking for a breakout of this pattern, and it's not happened to the upside. It's just continued to the downside. So I think short term, it's still got the downside towards this 49 cents area. But then I would anticipate a break of this resistance line, and then for it to move up again. So it looks like it's just doing a retest of 49 cents. As long as we don't get like a 2-week close below that, if we do that, you know, for me, that's warning signs. I don't mind a correction, don't mind a retracement. I don't mind it touching prior resistance, which should be support. But if it just sinks through it and then does nothing, then it's, for me, I would start to get a bit more cautious.
Yeah. Devi's a longtime favorite of mine, one of my largest holdings in altcoins. So obviously I'm a big fan. Because I own a little bit of equity in DEVVE as a company, by extension, I own a little bit of equity in DevvStream that we just reviewed, though I don't follow DevvStream closely because, like, at the end of the day, I'm waiting for the crypto market to go crazy. And that's when a lot of things I'll be looking at harvesting. I'll be looking at, what to take profits on. And we're not there yet. We're building towards that. But a lot of what I'm looking at is just seeing where prices are going, how the market's going. And when things that I really like get particularly cheap, I buy more. And take profit zones are much higher than where they're at. Now, sometimes I will sell some things earlier. If they go up and other things are relatively still down, I'll sometimes take profits on what's up, or more like roll it into something else. Yeah, DEVVE, I think it's a good buy. I think it's been going down like this. I do think it's going to start heading back to the upside very soon. And so this might be as close to as cheap as it gets before it goes through some more gains. I mean, fundamentally, it's got a lot of good things ahead for it. And so DEVVE definitely gets a buy. DevvStream, I don't know. Like, I don't really buy stocks, so I mostly focus on crypto tokens because they're way more volatile. And if you're trading it right, that's a good thing. If you're trading it wrong, that's a terrible thing. All right, let's jump into some of the ones on the schedule today. Let's take a look at Hype or Hyper. I think it's Hyperliquid.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hyperliquid, how much data should I have on this? Would you say? Let's see if I can get more. No, not really. It looks different as well. Yeah. Okay. So I'll maybe just choose the first one. So, yeah, is there a reasonable amount of data? Not really. We're starting sort of this year, and I don't know. I'll be very interested to see what sector this is in and what it does and all that sort of stuff and how it's viewed fundamentally. Technically, I mean, look, it's done extremely well from the April low. It's big downward trend here, and then not much of a sign to say that it was going to turn around. It was a very quick turnaround, and now it's pressing the prior highs. So, as far as the trend goes, would I want to change an opinion of, or what I would say, do I want to step in front of it and say that this is too high and now it needs to go back down again? I think there will be some selling around 44 because of the way it spiked there. So I would anticipate a bit of that and a bit of a pullback, perhaps to maybe 28 and a half, but the trend is still bullish. The only problem here is that there isn't a lot of data and it will be very thin. And so it is difficult to kind of, you with this, you've got to be watching it pretty much every day because there's the lack of actual data, and because of the space that it's in is one of the most volatile of all markets out there. So it's not one that I can set and forget, but I would expect if it can get through this prior high, that'd be doing pretty well, given that, what else are we seeing breaking into new highs across the altcoin spectrum? Not many. So why is it leading the way? I'd be interested in that. But overall, that trend's looking good. I'd feel a bit late in buying it myself right now.
Yeah.
So I might need to wait a little bit for a pullback. But overall, from a technical point of view, I'm kind of forced to buy it because there's nothing to tell me that other than this prior resistance there's no reversal pattern, and that's part of the discipline of technicals. You're looking for the trend to continue, or whatever the current state is to continue, until you get a signal in the opposite direction, and there isn't one. So for now, I'd have to say the bias is for me to the upside, but I can see that it has got a big level to take out before, it could get into some blue sky.
Yeah, Hyperliquid sounds interesting. Let me share some data on it. And let's see, this is the tab I want. So Hyperliquid, built fast on BlockDAG's EVM compatible L1. So if we go down here, what is Hyperliquid? Hyperliquid represents a cutting-edge blockchain platform specifically designed to enhance efficiency and performance of decentralized finance applications. At its core, Hyperliquid introduced a novel layer 1 blockchain that is meticulously engineered to optimize performance and scalability. The optimization is largely attributed to its proprietary consensus mechanism, which plays a pivotal role in ensuring rapid transaction finality and robust security measures. So that just gives you kind of an overview of what it is. I do like to look at the token vesting. So when it launched, a whole bunch of tokens, about a third of the supply was unlocked, and there aren't more unlocks until starting at the end of this year, and then they slowly start to fade in, so that by 2028 you will have about double the amount of tokens in circulation, close to that. So that's a responsible vesting curve. Here's my concern. Here was an amazing buy. Here, one of my concerns is when I watch major crypto YouTube channels and I hear several channels talking about it, that's my warning flag that I do not buy them, because that's sometimes a topping signal. Now, sometimes they go up further, but Hyperliquid is in the crypto news a bunch right now, which is not a buy signal. The buy signals are before that, and it's almost like a take profit zone for me that I roll into something else. If you look at it, it was just recently $10 and it hit almost $40 here. This is not a buy zone. This is where brand new people that don't know what they're doing buy, and then they sell on a retracement to $25 because they freak out and they get burned. Now, will Hyperliquid do better in the coming bull market? Yes, I would imagine. I imagine it kind of settles down and maybe it bounces around this $25 mark for a bit, and then later it goes up further. But for now, it's had a lot of its run where it just went 4x, leading the market when most other things are quiet and silent, and it's already at an $11 billion market cap. I would not bet in the short term that this is going to continue to run from here. So for me, it would actually be a sell, and I would roll it into things that are really, really cheap, because that's usually how I play it. Do I like it long term? Yeah, I think it's a pretty good blockchain that's getting some relevancy that I think at least for this bull run does very well, which means the market cap might go to $100 billion market cap. So maybe a total of 10x from here, maybe. But in the meantime, I think in the shorter term, it corrects back downwards. All right, let's take a look at our next one, which is Injective, which we've been keeping an eye on. Let's see what's happening with it.
So the trend has been developing nicely from this inverse head and shoulders base. We've got a nice upward trend line here that we can use to show if momentum's slowing. I think we were looking at maybe the prior resistance around where it is now, because that was the sort of breakdown level, the key breakdown point from what was a big top. So it's chewed it a little bit, which is fine, but it now looks like it's breaking through. So I think the headline for me here is that it's still bullish, working its way up. It's doing its job. It's got a couple of levels right now where it's crucial that it gets through them. We have got also this downward trend line for it to test at some point along the way. But overall, it's been doing, really well. So, and this is one of the ones that are indicating that there's further interest coming in certain altcoins and changing the sort of landscape of some of the, pretty bearish trends that we've seen elsewhere. So this is kind of leading the turnaround. And I would have expected it to continue in this vein because usually the stronger ones stay stronger. And so for me, it still remains a buy. If that's what I said before, which I think I might have done, for me, it should still be a buy.
Yes, I do think Injective has a lot more room ahead of it. Let's take a look at it on CoinMarketCap, and we're able to see the full history. So this is when it was getting tons of YouTube coverage and Injective every day on the major YouTube channels. And look at what followed. Major pullback. And this is why it's a warning flag to me when I see channels at 500,000 subscribers or more covering things as a great buy. Massive red flag. Because that's when they're all buying. And it does reward YouTube channels and crypto that cover, because this is when everyone's searching for Injective. When it's gone like this, so coverage, you get way more subscribers, you get way more likes, you get way more interest if you cover Injective when the price has been going up so strong. And then if you do a video on it down here, the YouTube algorithm will actually severely punish you. Though your audience could end up doing way better, your channel just won't get near as big. So it came all the way down here to $8, and I think it's on its climb up. Like, I'm not holding a lot of blue chips, but I really like Injective even at this price still. So though it's not as cheap as it was, I think it's got a long climb ahead of it, and it's earlier on the curve. Like, this nice correction downward is amazing and juicy for those that like buying low, and it's still pretty low. Where can something like Injective's market cap go? 20 billion, 40 billion. It'd be crazy if it went to 100 billion, but we might have a blow off top where Bitcoin goes to 500,000 or 750,000, or crazy if it went to 1 million. That type of environment, Injective's market cap could go even higher than those numbers I just stated, and maybe go to 70 billion, 100 billion, which would be crazy, but possible in that type of crazy environment. So for me at this, it gets a buy, even though I'm not holding blue chips. I'm in the riskier stuff. I know some of you do like blue chips. And so for me, just looking at the price action in the fundamentals behind Injective, that's why I rated a buy. Let's jump on over to Quant.
Yeah, so Quant, I was trying to get some history beyond like a few years, and going back to like 2019, this is still elevated from those lows. And interestingly, it has been trading around this 110 as a kind of pivotal level, i.e., it's traded up and then down and then swung up, swung down with smaller and smaller, or pretty much similar swings around it for quite some time. So at some point, it needs to make its mind up as to what direction it wants to go in. I think, given the broader macro scene, I think we can tip that bias to the upside. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee that this will be one that goes, but I think it does support it. It's better than it being the opposite and bearish. So is it going to break out now? I don't know, because all we have is a range, and it's still within the range. It's not done anything that it hasn't done before, if you see what I mean. So it's traded up from a low here and gone into a high, and then just traded back down again and hit support. Will it just do that again for a few more weeks and then break higher? I don't know. So I need to see something that's slightly outside its trading parameters or its signature to say, look, something's changed. Now, what would change is if it sort of went up to this 150 to 170 area and just sort of stayed there, because it tends to go up and then just come off very quickly. So that might be the first sign that this is readying a bigger breakout. So definitely one that approaching a point where it should break out, because the longer it goes on for, the more it's constricted. And the more it's constricted, the range is getting tighter and tighter, sort of coils up and gets ready to go. So we should definitely keep this in mind and keep watching it. If we don't look at it in a couple of weeks, within a month, we should be watching it again, because the signs it's turning might be there. But for the moment, it's going to be a wait for me, because I just want to see, I need to see something a bit more. And as I say, I think if there was a bias, if I had to sort of think of it in the point of view that I'm not going to see it again for 6 months, I would have a slightly more bullish view on it than a bearish view. But it's not enough for me to feel the need to jump into it.
This is an interesting one. I just got some write-ups from one of my really good friends that's in our Rainmaker private chat, and he's been super informative to everyone in our community on what's going on with the ISO standard coins, which is XRP, XLM. QUANT is included in that. And some of the things how QUANT is getting integrated into the payment systems. And he believes that QUANT has the potential to be over $100 billion market cap, perhaps this cycle, which would take it almost 100x from here. So that's part of the value from being in our Rainmaker private Discord. Is it's not just me, it's other people that have a lot of experience in finance and also crypto, sharing their views and sharing additional information on things like QUANT. Now, QUANT wasn't really on my radar, and he put it on my radar with that. One of my factors of what I look at is I look at things and I want to see a strong potential that they could do higher returns, like a 50x, 100x or more. And so I like that a lot. Now, unfortunately, it recently come up from 60,000, almost double, or not 60,000, $63, almost double from that. And there might be some more sideways tracing before it breaks above these. So I would say it's a decent buy for those holding blue chips at this price. He might be right that something like QUANT, there might be a shift, an awakening that happens with how the new payment rails is going to be based on a lot of these ISO standard coins led by XRP. And if that happens, XRP's price could see perhaps a 50x, perhaps 100x in that environment. Things like QUANT could see 100x in that environment. Really interesting to see how this plays out, but I wanted to include QUANT in today's analysis and just share some of the thoughts he shared with me. This is one to keep an eye on, especially if you're interested in blue chips, and I would rate it as a buy. All right, let's take a look at our next one, which is SUI. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but that one.
Yeah. So SUI. Again, this is one that's been more favored from a technical point of view, simply because it did manage to break into new highs. It has come back into its prior breakout as support. I think, as I've said many times, I probably got overexcited as it was in this trend, and so probably looking for more highs around here, even though it then started a correction. So the end of that correction, break of that downward trend line started here, and it's been kind of moving up quite nicely. It's been moving up, consolidating, moving up, consolidating. At this point in time, it has broken this trend line, which is not great, but it's not the end of the world. It's more drifted into it rather than strong selling and a big break of it. So I'd still be willing to give this more time for it to break higher and have a go at this prior high at $5.35 as we move into kind of the second half of the year. So give it time to consolidate a bit more and then move higher. So given that it's a leading trend, and although that was quite a fast trend rate moving here when not many altcoins were moving higher, it's giving a consolidation here. The only time I would start to really worry about this would be is if this trend line goes. So it's got a few things to do, or few supports to get through before I start to worry. But overall, I still feel that the bullishness of the trend is more dominant, and despite the short-term consolidation, this should be one that hopefully leads the way higher. So for me, at this point, it's still a buy.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. SUI was able to take advantage of all the research that Meta did, and Meta put like $1 billion into researching, and they were going to build their own blockchain, and they were going to build their own stable coin based on a basket of different stable coins and assets. And the U.S. government, many other governments, put the kibosh on that. Now, if they had just launched blockchain and not tried to create a stable coin with it, that probably would have been fine. But a lot of that research got handed over to SUI, and I think like they have a very good blockchain. A lot of corporations are making partnerships with them to use their blockchain. I'm seeing good things come together. That the team behind it, I'm liking the things behind what I'm seeing. This is one I covered when it was way down at these levels. And I thought SUI was going to have a really good future. It then went all the way up to $5, bounced back down, and is setting here. I like buying cheap. I think SUI does really well in the bull run. I suspect it's going to come down a little bit more before it goes up. And so getting that extra juicy buy is important. Even if I'm buying blue chips, I'd be waiting on this, hoping that it comes back down closer to like 220, 230, and that might be a better buy price if it does come back down to there. So for me, it's just a wait. Am I buying SUI? No, outside my guidelines. So just another blue chip that I like. If I were buying blue chips, yes, I would absolutely have bought it actually back here. I would have loaded the boats with it. But I'm just not looking for blue chips. I would rather be in the things that I think can do a 40, 50, 100, 200, 300, 400x. And that means I forego things that are a lot more stable, that might do a 20 or 30 or 40x, 40x or 50x at the high side versus like a 200 or 300x on some of the risky projects, if the market really comes together well. So, all right, let's take a look at, we got some suggestions. Tommy's suggestion that we take a look at Strike on CoinGecko. It's 1488 with a green icon. So let's see, CoinGecko. And let's see, Strike. The green icon. So that would be this one. Wow. Something is definitely happening with that one. Oh, I still got, there we go.
Yeah. Like you say, something's definitely happening. I had a quick look while you were talking at the chart. And look, it's a straight line move up. There's not a whole lot of data. There is a bit from November, so we've got a few months. It seems to be on the run. So what does one say about something's on the run? Do you jump on it, or and is this the top, or do you wait and it just keeps going up? It's a very difficult thing to call here. Where I find technical levels to jump into things are usually at prior highs. So you see how we got a prior high here at 30 cents. That crossover, that is a technical buy. Now it's still a buy here. It's just that the trend rate has accelerated, and one has to be careful when it's accelerating like this. Not that it's necessarily the high here, but it's just that we're approaching sort of potential panic buying. It needs to consolidate for a bit, especially when it's not very liquid. So what would I do here? It's a good question. Personally, I would have to be forced to buy in because the trend is moving so aggressively. I'd feel slightly uncomfortable about how far it's already moved and how much I might have potentially missed it. And I don't normally mind buying things that are moving up. It's just that it wouldn't have been that long ago that there was some good buy signals, and I feel like I'm chasing it a little bit. So I would prefer to see this consolidate. And that's if I only could trade this. I might want to trade something that's doing this that's a bit more mature. And for me, that actually presents a better opportunity. But just looking at this, whilst the trend is up, I have to accept that that's the case. And I can't give a technical signal that it's reversed until the market tells me. So I have to go with that. Now, what could be a technical signal that it has reversed is this green candle that we've got here comes all the way back in a week or so and trades back down here. Then that becomes a sell signal. So obviously these things change as time goes on, but it is an interesting chart. It's what they do is relatively interesting as well. Options forwards and perpetual futures on the Cardano blockchain. So there's some interesting due diligence that could be done here to check out what they're offering. Finance related seems to be interesting, but for the moment, yeah, I think this is so new. There is such little data. We have to approach it with a lot of caution. But given the way the chart is now, I have no other choice but to say it looks like it's going higher.
Yeah, here's Vidimon said, I've been on strike since summer of 04, maybe 2024. It is a no-brainer revenue sharing derivatives project on Cardano. Deep dive it and you'll be enticed. I'll just share like my number one rule in crypto is I never chase green candles, especially green candles like this. And when I see this, I'm like, damn, well, shoot. Below this and even at this breakup to the upside, it were decent times to buy this. Now is just a time of like, I like to think of it as boats loading up at the dock and boats that have left the dock, right? And what I never do is I never jump off the pier and chase down boats that I've missed that are way out there. Because sometimes they come back to dock. And even if they don't, there are other boats at the dock they're good to load up on. And so somebody chasing this when they could have bought it at, say, 11 cents. And now it's 6x from that. Well, those who loaded up at 11 cents are now up 6x. Those that are buying in here are not up at all yet. And let's say it goes another 10x from here. Well, that means anyone loading up here got 10x. Anyone who loaded up here got a 60x. The difference on that is huge. So congratulations to Vidimon, who got in this much, much cheaper. And congratulations, I would imagine, that Tommy has been following it a little bit. So is it a good buy at this? I just don't chase green candles. So for me, it's a wait. And depending, if I knew a ton about it, I might even take a little profits, roll it into something else, or set to the side in case it came back down. But it definitely is not a buy area for me. Though congrats to those that have been following it closely. I know a lot of my community follows a lot of these altcoins on the Cardano blockchain, and I think that's smart. I mean, Cardano turned a corner about 9 months ago, really integrating with the Trump team and talking to them about crypto. And I think the US can be very favorable to the Cardano ecosystem. And so I think Cardano is going to make it long term. And so some of these projects building on Cardano, I think are going to do very well in the coming bull run. All right, so we have a question. Is Animal Concerts dead? That is a fantastic question. And I would say it's either in low flow mode. I like to think of it as perhaps you've seen a YouTube video where like there's this crocodile or alligator that's in a frozen stream and the snout is just up above the top. and they take multiple pictures or video of it. And as the stream melts, it actually comes back alive. And because you think, oh my gosh, it's frozen the ice. It's surely dead. It wasn't. It was just in like hibernation mode. So either Animal Concerts is in hibernation mode or is dead. And which of those two? I don't know. I think it's in hibernation mode. Am I buying more at this price? There's just other ones that I'm seeing more activity, that the price is way, way, way more punished on, that I'm buying. But I'm not selling what I have in Animal Concert. I'm just waiting to see if it comes back alive. And sometimes they do. A great example of this is, what is it called? Axie Infinity. And Axie Infinity at a few points during the last bear market and early bull market looked like Axie Infinity was probably dead or going to die. And yet it came back and was one of the top producers. So I don't sell my ones that are way, way down like this. I just hold them and see if they come back alive. And if they don't, that's okay. I use diversification so that I don't need all my ones to hit, just some of them, because some of them hit so hard, it makes up for the ones that that die in the meantime. We don't have to pull up I guess we can pull up the charts on that real quick if you have the chart up on Animal Concerts.
Yeah, there's there's signs of life in the chart. I was expecting to see it, much lower. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, severe bear market. So there's clearly it's got a lot to do to turn around, but at least it's been moving up from sort of mid-April. So we've had a few months of gains, and it's got some evidence of a base in there. But as we've seen with some other of these markets, you get these really strange spikes, which sort of appear and then disappear, and the market goes back to where it's traded before. And I don't know whether that's signs of like very short-term positions pushing it around, or whether it's bad data. But either way, I'd like to see more volume coming into it, and not seeing spikes like that generally. But from a technical point of view, it's actually trying to turn around. It's got a bit more work to do, but it's really close to its 200-day moving average. So this line here, this blue average line here, is the 200-day moving average. If it can get through that, that's be the first really good sign. The next really good sign would be if it can get through, these 4 zeros, 6097. That was the key sell level on this breakdown. And if it touches it and gets back through that, then for me, it's underwater while it's there, but it gets above water and gets out and into the fresh air above that level. So there's a few things that are worth keeping an eye on. It doesn't look like it's dead. It just looks like it's actually trying to reverse. And because it's been in such a severe bear market, it's a lot of work to do. So definitely we need to come back to this again, because it could be testing these levels or even breaking them in the next few weeks.
Yeah. It's fun to see some signs of life in the charts. As far as the company, I don't know. What's funny is a lot of these companies, they're smart if they go into hibernation mode and they just like really slow the expenditure of resources until the market really takes off. And it often will help them survive so that they can then focus on their resource in the coming bull market. So their idea was to provide concerts with the celebrities that they knew in the metaverses. And during the bear market, that is not going to happen, nor is that narrative really going to grow. But in a bull market, when narratives like metaverses are hitting, yes, as long as they're still alive. So that's the risk, right? So the fully diluted market cap, $415,000. So you can buy 1/400th of the whole market cap for about $1,000. Risky proposition. If it works out, I saw some projects in 2017 that went from a market cap of about 400,000 to 100 million, and boy, the returns were crazy. So will that happen here? I have no idea. We'll see if they survive, and if so, then their market cap could go into the tens or hundreds of millions. Absolutely. All right. Chumbi Valley takes. Now, one of my community members, Game Trove, really follows Chumbi Valley closely. And I think they're just kind of running into some bear market woes, but they're working with Nintendo to put themselves on Nintendo's entertainment system and the game on possibly other consoles. So that's all good news. And their price is nice and cheap. So it's definitely one to watch Game Trove's videos on and see what you think about the team behind it and about their chances of surviving the bear market until blockchain gaming hits. Because if they do, this might be a buy of a century.
I guess over to me, is it? Or
Yeah.
Well, it has been going up or consolidating since the 5th of March. As you can see, that low represented a kind of an end of sorts in the sense that it had stopped the severe sell-off at that point, and it's now going sideways. It's not quite going up though, is it? And what we've seen more from other altcoins is it's made this is normally a bearish pattern, but the bearish patterns have failed and it's gone the other way. So I can't say that it's a buy yet because this chart implies further downside. But I've also seen this chart turn into a bullish chart, because what we look for is a break of this lower line that sends the market lower. But the other side of that is if it breaks this resistance, then the direction's changed. It's formed a base. So at this point in time, it's definitely a wait for me. But as I've mentioned before, some credence has got to be given to the broader supportive factors of the macro situation that we're in. And given that that's positive, I'd be more willing to sort of stand aside and not get overly bearish on this pattern and just see how it plays out. So you can anticipate a breakout and trade it before it breaks out. And if things were different, if we'd seen a top in the market already and things were going down, or there was all sorts of topping patterns forming in the majors, I would be like, yeah, this is a sell. It's going to go much lower. But I have to be more, I've got to attenuate that, because I do think that there is some evidence that altcoins are turning around, and this could be one of them. So good idea to come back to it, and let's see where we are in a few weeks, if it's managed to break this resistance point. And at some point, I think there will be broader interest in these other projects. So it would make sense that there will be broadening interest from this technology that goes into other areas. But for the moment, we've got to see it in the price. Unless it's there, it's just potential. So good one to look at, but we're going to have to wait a bit longer, I think.
Well, the market cap on this one is very juicy at $154,000 market cap. That means for $1,500, you're able to get 1/100th of the current circulating token supply. The fully diluted valuation is about 3x from that. So over time, there will be more tokens that come into circulation. Now, these kind of charts, let me show this. These kind of charts usually scare people away. And this is blockchain gaming, first of all, has performed much like this, other than a lot of blockchain gaming projects really took off during this period of 2023. And then they came back and settled down. Chumbi Valley is absolutely punished right here. And that's a great thing if they survive and you're able to buy some tokens at these prices. It's a terrible thing if they don't survive from here. So let's take a look at their Twitter and see, does it look like they're surviving? Well, they're at least posting. So the 27th, they posted this, catch the tired raid in. I guess it wasn't tired after all. The valley holds many resources, but what lies within? So they're still posting fairly frequently on Twitter. If you're interested in this one, I would definitely check Game Trove's videos on it, because he follows this one closely. because you're trying to look for what are the signs of life. Is this game going to be able to make it until the coming bull run? Because if so, something like this can go to market cap really easy in the tens of millions, maybe the 100 million range. And from where the market cap is now, like that's a massive, massive return from 154, 155K market cap going to say $150 million market cap. That's 1,000x from here, like massive returns. And that market cap in that scenario doesn't even cross $1 billion. So potentially this is a risky one. This is not one to go all in on. You would be crazy to do it. But this is definitely one to look a lot closer at. I think it shows some signs of life, but I would be watching GameTro's videos to see how solid those signs of life are to figure out if this one is there. I'm going to rate this a buy. It's a risky buy, but still a buy. All right. Last suggestion. Can we look at the OMI, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So, so 2 weeks ago, we were looking at how the lows were lifting off and there was some signs that something was happening. Last week, it was this line here that I found interesting. And I thought, well, if it trips through there, we might get quite a big move, which we did. But then it came back and retested that line. So it's kind of gone away, looking bullish, and then it's come back for a retest. So this has been slapped back, but it's still within these rising lows. So I think there is more evidence that this is basing out. And given that it's come back to a retest point, that's usually a buy point. That would usually be a point where you would get in because it should act as support. So I could argue that this is a buy at this point, and it should hold this and then start to move up. Now, because this has been always the bridesmaid, never the bride, it's been going down for such a long time. We have to sprinkle in a bit more caution and perhaps have a couple of layers of kind of bullish signs before actually stepping in with a buy signal. So nibbling here, I can understand, but any serious positions, I think for me, I'd still have to wait a bit longer, partly because this 200-day moving average here is still below that. So there's still mixed signals in the sense that it's below the 200-day moving average, but it's been trading above its shorter term moving average, the 63-day. So from there being virtually no signals that it was basing and the trend being very smooth to the downside, we've got a few that are suggesting this should start to go up. So I'd put this in the we need to watch this more frequently. I could justify a short-term buy here. And if it can hold this level and start to show some green bars again, and if by next week it's testing this point, I think it would look very, very interesting. But I'm willing to sort of wait for that, because I think if this is going to base out and have a longer bull market, then I'd rather be slow to getting into it than too quick and then hang around with something that's just not moving. But there has definitely been some signs that have changed the dynamics of this market, and we'll see how it trades against this support.
Yeah, I do think OMI's bottomed out. It broke below this support here. And boy, look how it came in. It formed this nice rounded bottom. That doesn't mean it doesn't come back down, but I don't think it breaks below that again. I think the bottom on OMI is in. That doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily come cheaper for a little bit than it is right now. And then I think it's ready to run the other way. Now, anything in this range is an amazing buy. Like everything below 0.0, below this price, this whole zone down here, I think people will look back and be like, I can't believe it was ever that cheap. Why did I not load up? So that's like this whole zone here. This is an amazing, amazing price. Sometimes that happens. So it definitely gets a buy from me. I have been buying this one. I bought some more like a week ago and 2 weeks ago. And yeah, when prices were down here, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just too good to be true. All right. Well, that's a lot of what we're looking at today. Paul, any final thoughts?
No, not really. Just yeah, let's just see if the altcoins start to take the lead a bit, and maybe Bitcoin has a consolidation. And look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for the picks, thanks for the comments, and have a great week.
All right, Paul, thanks for joining us. Thanks to DEVVE for lending them to us. We love having you here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Right. So what's funny is when cycle investing can be frustrating. Now, specific like cycles is just playing. Every investment asset class has cycles, that they have up cycles and then down cycles, and usually it swings over a certain amount of time. Not usually as predictable as the crypto cycle is. And most of the 4-year crypto cycle is driven by a couple factors. One of them is the Bitcoin halving. One of them is that every 4 years, usually interest rates come down in the US related to the presidential race. And so the combination of those two things has usually historically driven tons of money into liquidity into crypto, creating a massive, massive pump. Now, this election cycle, interest rates just came down a tiny bit after being pretty high. I think they come down a little bit more this year. And I think liquidity really starts funneling into crypto coming soon. We're already seeing some of that in Bitcoin's price. I do think the thing to watch is Bitcoin's price, because a lot of these riskier altcoins aren't going to pop till after Bitcoin breaks 130,000, then maybe 160. And especially if it starts flying up further from there, at some point, a lot of that momentum rolls into these really low market cap coins and can take their market caps 100x, 200x, 300x. So it's a good time. A lot of them are still really cheap. And one of the key principles of making great money in any investment class is buy low and then sell high. But if you don't buy low, you're missing the most important part of that equation. So I'm glad you're here joining us so that we can look at what might be low, what might not be so low in this environment, and what might be some opportunities for you to look further into. Well, this is a quick commercial I'm going to play for my Zero to Crypto Hero course. If you haven't taken it, haven't gone through it, you might really consider it. It's specifically designed for those with good to high incomes to shorten your learning curve, so you learn the crypto game and how to buy low, sell high much faster than you otherwise would. If you were like most of us, we came into crypto for life-changing gains, but were you aware that 89% of people do rather poorly in crypto? Only 5% achieve massive gains, and it's because they're doing things differently than most in crypto do. If you want to learn what most successful people in crypto do different, my Zero to Crypto Hero course will show you 5 massive mistakes to avoid and 3 things you need to be doing right. Awesome. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you all soon. We're going to exit with this wrap, which is just a fun way to reinforce these principles that make all the difference in making amazing money versus no money at all.
Into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. Principles are simple, to leave in a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to studying to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.